Welcome to this MASB video feature on the topic of name, image, and likeness. I'm Tony Pace, the president and CEO of MASB, and with me today are two experts in the field of name, image, and likeness. We have Blake Lawrence of Opendorse. He is the CEO and founder of Opendorse, and Ray Katz, the COO of Collegiate Sports Management Group. Gentlemen, welcome and thanks for joining us today. So lots of people have heard about the NIL term, but they're not really aware of how quickly it is moving upon us. The commitment is that current college athletes are going to be available for marketers and for the marketing world to create affiliations with starting in the 2021-2022 academic year. And if I can start by asking Blake a question. Blake, do you think we're very far along in terms of how this opportunity is going to shake out?
I would say that the everyday brand or marketer would like to know a lot more about what they can and cannot do in terms of partnering with collegiate student athletes for endorsement campaigns or promotional material creation, anything like that. The legislation that's been proposed to allow student athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness has various restrictions and various levels, and there's not a ton of clarity. So I would say that being less than 8 months away from this market being turned on and knowing as little as the market does about what's allowed, I would say that most marketers and the market itself are behind, and there's a lot of ground to make up in these next 8 months.
So Blake, that lack of clarity about what's going on probably is inhibiting folks from taking action. You and I talked briefly about the potential for kind of a first mover advantage here. Would you speak in a little bit of detail about that, please?
Yeah, I would say that most marketers that are already experienced in sports marketing and they're advertising during sports media, they're sponsoring sports teams, leagues, athletic departments, they already know the value of being affiliated with these brands. And if you look at the history of professional sports marketing, we all know the value of an athlete endorsement. So there are not many new things to the athlete endorsement. It's the opportunity for the marketers in the collegiate space to be the first to have a student athlete endorsement. And the first mover advantage is really tied to the almost cause marketing more than it is sports marketing. The first brands and advertisers to say we're going to directly support the student athlete in the college landscape is going to have a legacy, something to stand on. So those that are prepared for the moment will be able to have that first mover advantage, and that can go a long way. As we all know in advertising, being the first to do something for the right reasons has a lasting effect on the consumer.
So that's great. Let's talk a little bit about measurement, because our perspective from a marketing accountability standpoint is you got to have measurement there. Do you think that the same kind of tools that are used now to look at influencers and other endorsements are going to apply here, or are there going to be some other dimensions that maybe aren't at the fore right now?
Well, I would say that, Ray, you might be able to talk on the sponsor activations and what to look for. And I would say from an outside perspective real quick, and working in athlete endorsements for the last decade and providing technology in that space, I would say that the athlete endorsement side has a little bit more emotion or passion tied to it than pure return on investment. And when you get into the college sports landscape, I think, Ray, you would know as good as anyone that passion plays a significant role as advertisers look to spend.
Yeah, I think when you look at athletes versus teams, putting out social media messaging, it's stronger. And then college athletes or college alums, such as University of Nebraska alums, where Blake played linebacker, they're going to get the biggest click-through rate and response rate of all, not to mention passion and engagement. So we're really excited to see how this will work. From our standpoint, working mostly outside the Power Five and with a custom product that Opendorse has developed for us, we believe that this is all going to be additive and is going to attract more sponsor money as well as more endorsement money, because budget is not the limitation for us, scale is.
So we've all talked about the fact that this is referred to as a name, image, and likeness opportunity. But as with the click-through discussion we were just having, it's really about the influence piece. Mm-hmm. And in the discussions we've had in our sponsorship accountability team, the value to the student athlete is certainly the compensation they're going to get. But beyond that, it may be the opportunity for things like internships, right? There was a long-running campaign about the fact that most college athletes are going to go professional in something other than their sport. And the interaction between student athletes and businesses, either locally or nationally, might be a great opportunity for them to get some experience and maybe even make contact with an organization they're going to work for long term. Would you like to talk about that for a second, Ray?
Yeah, I mean, as someone that is both an educator, has had athletes that are college athletes in my class for many years, in sports marketing classes, the best way for them to get knowledge is to get organic experience at the same point. And one does not have to be a Heisman Trophy winning athlete in order to have great influence in their community. I think of, I go back to Damon Bailey at University of Indiana, that would have been worth a tremendous amount of money, and Gordy Lockbaum at a Holy Cross. And then there are some tremendous players even in the Southern Conference with whom we work. So I think this is a great way for all these athletes that are going to go into the business world to make a little cash, make a little legacy cash as alums, and then get that experience interfacing with corporations.
Great.
If I could jump in on that too, Tony, one of the things that is really interesting about, as a student athlete myself and working with now more than 30,000 athletes that use our products at Opendorse, the professional athlete evolution today, you're seeing more and more of these athletes that are monetizing their name, image, and likeness as professional athletes online. And they're starting to learn when they get to the pros that these tools, social, digital media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, that used to be fun and just a good way to engage or to be mindless at the end of the day, are now business tools for them to build an audience that is ultimately going to create a tremendous amount of value. Most athletes learn that when they go to the pros, right? And there's about 5,000 professional athletes in North America that really move the needle in endorsements every year. It's now going to shift to 500,000 student athletes that are going to learn day one on campus how important it is to use those tools to build an audience and to generate value. And so the interesting thing from an advertiser's perspective is that there used to be a very small subset of athletes that understood the importance of having a great online representation and marketing yourself to build up an audience. But now there will be a 100 times larger market to choose from, which can actually help these advertisers find very niche audiences and a well-equipped athlete, or now student athlete, to team up with to reach those audiences.
Great. And would I be correct in my assumption that to some degree the experience, especially for folks who are just kind of starting out as freshmen or earlier in the athletic side of their college experience, the experience may be actually almost more valuable long term than the cash compensation, because they're learning what businesses are looking for with regard to their social media or other presence.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is, in the world today, the community we all live in, it is very important that you represent yourself well online. And it's a life skill to develop for every student, not just student athletes. And the development that's going to come with NIL and things that we're doing together with Ray and CSMG to bring education and equipping student athletes at all levels of the NCAA and beyond to understand the importance of representing themselves well online and building their own personal brand. Again, whether they make $1 or not from an endorsement deal, right, or ever get a kid to pay for an autograph on the side of the street, they're going to learn a life lesson. And that is ultimately what is so great about the NCAA student athlete experience, is that you are there to learn. And not all learning comes from the classroom. I can tell you that firsthand. And I think that's the exciting part about what this is going to do for student athletes in this new era.
As we were developing the series of articles we put forth on sponsorship, when we came to the name, image, and likeness topic, one of the things that struck us was that much of the conversation seemed to be about how do you kind of register the relationships that are there and make sure that all the behavior is above board. There wasn't as much discussion of kind of what is going to be beneficial to the business or the marketing entity, and it didn't seem that marketers were really represented all that well in that conversation. Do you have you experienced enough interaction to say that kind of marketing perspectives or business perspectives are informing the conversation, or is it still more in the we need to kind of put some barriers up against bad circumstances potentially happening?
Ray, is there anything from the sponsor side in those conversations that really pops up that comes top of mind?
Well, I think the sponsor doesn't want to be associated with a transaction that's going to get questioned later on. Right? But right. I think from a sponsor standpoint, your kind of MASB audience kind of sponsor, I don't think there's really a worry behind that, because they're not going to be the ones that are going to way overpay, for a half a dozen tweets that are, getting sent out to an audience of 100,000, that an RJ Barrett or someone of that level has, right? The bigger issue is there an auto dealer somewhere in the SEC that's paying $100,000 who happens to coincidentally be a graduate of one of the top athletics programs, right, and is getting paid $100,000 to do 6 tweets to an audience of 5,000 people.
Yep. And I think that's one of those things that this audience, the MASB audience, does understand, that there are ways to, you understand the market rates, right? Nobody here wants to overspend on marketing and advertising. They want to spend the right amount every single time. Right? So what's interesting is this audience is going to be able to identify outliers or malfeasance or bad actors as well as anybody on the planet. Right? So I think what's interesting is that the desired outcome by the NCAA and the legislative efforts, even at the state or federal levels, is to allow student athletes to monetize name, image, and likeness, but not change the integrity of collegiate athletics and turn these into a pay-for-play scheme. And the well-equipped, educated advertiser or marketer, again, never wants to overspend on an asset. But interesting enough, some of these local businesses and sponsors will have a desire to overspend so they can maybe get the next 5-star quarterback to come to their school, not their rival school. And so the desire for the market to kind of right itself may take time, because you'll have to understand, like, what is a good actor acting with good intention, what's a bad actor acting on their own. And again, this audience knows the way that data can tell a story and what the purpose of a promotion becomes, and the outcome is measurable. So got to track everything and try and identify the outliers.
So one of the interesting things about working with collegiate athletes is they're there for a very defined period of time, and then they move on. So in any of the conversations you're having, when people talk about programs that they can hopefully come back to more than once, is that something of an impediment? The captain of a certain team at any institution this year is probably pretty close to graduation. So if you were going to continue a relationship with the captain of that team, it will be a different person in a very different circumstance the next year. There isn't the same kind of continuity. Has that issue come to the fore in any of the discussions?
Ray, I'm going to give you a comparison here. It's a little bit, I know from the CSMG standpoint, speaking with the sponsor and maybe talking about student athletes that are, at an institution you have a relationship with, or the market, where it's kind of like upfronts, right? Like, tell me what is so great about this year's class, right? And then you have a season. And then you're gonna sunset some of the programming, you're gonna get fresh programming, and then we're gonna say, hey, Kate, tell me about this season. So it's not unfamiliar, right? If you think about the way that marketers and advertisers want to understand the assets that are being offered to them and what's new, what's fresh, what's different, what's better. And it, in a strange way, Ray, you might be looking at a 5-star landing on a campus that you have a close relationship with to be like landing a new hit sitcom, right? And being able to sell advertising against it. So can you imagine that's the new way to pitch the opportunities, and that turnover is actually maybe a good thing.
Great.
Yeah, I think it keeps it fresh. It's just different pool outs of a campaign, if you will. I mean, I would say that whether it's the starting quarterback at Notre Dame, the starting tailback at Ohio State, right, or if we go back 20, 30 years, the best linebacker at Penn State, you have a continuity of a campaign just with different executions. But frankly, it could be the best lacrosse player at Tufts. Mm-hmm. That works just as well.
Yeah, and it's also, if you can identify your audience, you might be surprised at which athletes have captivated that audience, and they may not be from the institutions that you're thinking about right now, but because it's the online audience that most advertisers are going to be tapping into when it comes to the student athlete market. You're going to be able to use data to identify the influential student athletes in that market. And again, all signs in the history of collegiate sports marketing is going to be the Heisman or All-American candidates in your major sports, basketball and football, are the ones that we see on television all the time, but they may not be the ones that are actually capturing the attention of the buyers that you're looking to reach as an advertiser. And so I think you might be surprised to know that my bet on this call, just real quick, is that there are the winners in the NIL market the first year. I think there are 2 women, sophomore basketball players in the women's basketball team at Fresno State, the Cavender twins, Hannah and Haley, that will make more money through name, image, and likeness monetization than any athlete on a football team next year. That's my bet.
And that's because they've got a great following already?
They got about 3 million TikTok followers and are getting $10,000 plus offers into their direct messages on a weekly basis. They have to turn down because they're student athletes.
Wow. So along those lines, Blake and Ray, I'd love for you to take out your crystal ball. And if we were sitting here a year from now and we were talking about what has transpired with regard to name, image, and likeness, what thing is going to go better than we expect and we're going to be excited about, and what may be a little bit of a drag on what's happening and might need to be addressed?
Well, Ray, go. You start. You start.
I mean, I would say that there are going to be some big surprises, that an athlete like a McCurr Maker, who's going to Howard, is going to over-deliver relative to all the other 5 stars in the country, with the exception of who is projected to be the number 1 draft choice. Because
for those that aren't insiders, McCurr Maker is a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
McCurr Maker is the first 5-star player. It's either ever or in a bunch of decades to go to an HBCU, a historically black college and university. And that decision is going to be incredibly profitable for both him and the university. And I will tell you that additionally, ESPN is taking a whole bunch of Howard games next year because of that. Never happened before.
Yep. And so surprises like that will be real. I think for the marketers and advertisers, there's going to be some fits and starts as well, right? With an understanding, I thought we could do this, and getting hand slapped and trying to navigate and figure it out. And I would say with any new inventory on the market, there's a benefit for being the first one to figure it out. And so those ones that are going to sit back and wait, they may have a more clear picture a year from now. But those that get in there, get dirty, and roll up their sleeves and work with the market to make the most of the opportunity are most likely going to have a head start that others can't catch up with. So the other components of this are that student athletes who think entrepreneurially may not rely solely on marketers and advertisers to monetize their audience at all. I think we might be surprised at how student athletes create merchandise lines and become their own brand and businesses on their own, and are selling autographs online, or setting up their own Shopify stores and monetizing their own audience without the need for a marketer and advertiser to prove to the world that they do have value, they can generate value, and I think that will attract more advertisers as the market grows.
One of the things that is interesting to me is right now during recruitment, especially in football, it seems as though many of the big schools, a couple of the players who make early commitments tend to become kind of the advocate for the school. And it's often not the quarterback or offensive star that is taking that position. It's somebody else. And to your point about interesting people that may actually be very valuable going forward, it may be people at positions that are not that high profile that end up being particularly good and adept in social media, so that they attract an awful lot of folks to their content.
Yeah, I think that's.
I would totally agree with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ray, being in that locker room or thinking back more than a decade ago at Nebraska, the ones that were great at interviews and press conferences in front of the microphone and the local media members loved them were most often those offensive linemen, right, that were just going to shoot it straight and tell you how it is. And, they're not the most marketable when you would consider the professional athlete and offensive lineman, because they don't need to be in front of that audience. No one's trying to put them on that stage. But in these, the college student athlete experience, I think you might see the personalities that shine through have as much of an impact on their earning potential as their position. And I think that's where, Ray, what we're doing together is helping athletes understand that if they lean into it, no matter their position, they can put themselves in a better position to monetize when the rules change.
I think it's exciting, and I think we've built the deal in such a way so that there's an incentive for most of the schools, if not all of them, in a conference to get on board. That's going to have a benefit. To one thing, schools aren't going to be recruiting against each other in a conference. And then the second thing is it's going to be easier for a brand to go into one exchange and cover an entire region. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the Southeastern Conference or the Southern Conference or whatever the case may be. So that's going to be a major benefit. I think there are going to be brands that are challenger brands that are going to get on the map with this because of the relative efficiency, and there are going to be some legacy brands that are going to fall behind.
So one other question. We talked about the Cavendish twins at Fresno State being a potential breakthrough, McCord Maker being a potential breakthrough. Outside of the revenue-producing sports, meaning football and basketball, is there any other sport that you think might jump to the fore in social media based on what you're seeing, or is it really too soon to tell that?
We've got our eyes on some track and field athletes that are have found a way. There's a student athlete at Arkansas that's built up over 100,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel and could be making thousands of dollars a month and at YouTube advertising from that audience. And it's more, again, putting the sport aside and looking at the personality of the student athlete. I think that's what's going to be revealing. And I would say that if anyone out there is really wants to dive into it, the female student athlete may have a significant advantage in monetization opportunities in the NIL era. Because of the lean towards the creator economy and influencer marketing and influencer monetization, which is a category where there's a majority of marketers and advertisers in the beauty and fashion that are spending and finding a lot of success by partnering with female influencers and creators. And the student athlete, female experience is one that this is for most female student athletes the pinnacle of their sports career, and where they're generating the most attention from a localized fan base. So the combination of those factors and the female influencer monetization opportunities that are out there right now, the female student athlete may have a great amount of success for marketers that lean into it.
Great. Ray, are there any metrics that you think are going to become more important or kind of top of the list in terms of assessment of success here? We talked a little bit about ROI earlier, and we referenced click-through rates, but are there other metrics you think may be particularly important as we move forward?
I think you're going to look at all the typical influencer metrics. Would you recommend this brand, et cetera? And then I think there's going to be a great ability to do research through this platform as well. and really see what the impact is on whatever the key brand metric is, whether it's an auto insurance being one of the first two brands from whom I'm going to get a quote, or whatever the case may be. And I just want to echo, I think it's exciting for women's athletics, because the value of women's athletics is no longer going to be limited to what the TV ratings are. Mm-hmm. So our ability to sell Hoops Mania specifically to a female brand for the 25 conferences we represent and focus on the women's tournaments is going to be that much greater if we can grab the top 100 players in these 25 conferences and have them be part of the messaging.
Yep. And Tony, I know that we're talking about metrics, and one that I'll throw in there is, and it's not as a marketing metric, but is important to every marketer, and that's efficiency. Okay, one of the challenges is in the professional athlete market, athlete endorsements have mostly run through talent agencies or professional sports league associations, right? So your players associations who can assist in identifying and activating professional athletes at scale. 99.9% of student athletes will not have an agent. And if they do, it may be a relative that has never done a marketing deal before. And so the marketers and advertisers out there that have ever had to deal with the traditional professional sports agent may know it's not easy, it's not fun, and often you overpay simply because that agent's job is to maximize the outcome for their client. The student athlete most likely will not have an agent that is sitting there driving up prices. You may be paying the market rate, but I do advise those marketers and advertisers to understand that getting access to a large amount of student athletes at scale will not occur in the same way it works in the pro athlete space with a group licensing agreement or otherwise. So you're going to have to be patient to identify and get access to those athletes, but also be fair, knowing that you're in control with a novice athlete doing their first endorsement deal. So everybody can win if you work together and have the right intentions with it. And you're going to have an easy way to get access to all those athletes. And I know, Ray, that's with Opendorse and our products, Opendorse Deals, this is, more than 30,000 athletes one click away. And we're on the way to more than 100,000 student athletes by the time this market turns on.
So I would say if you want to get some experience now with a school like University of Nebraska, then start with some University of Nebraska alums right now.
Yeah, get an old washed-up linebacker, Tony. That's what all these marketers and advertisers need. You need an old, skinny linebacker. Oh.
So actually, to that point, is what from the experience that athletic alumni have had, what have you seen from there that may apply here, maybe kind of relevant perspective?
I'll give you one with real numbers real quick. And I'm sure that they wouldn't mind. And if they see this, then you'll know the numbers. About 3 years ago, Burger King came to Opendorse and did a campaign in the Northeast. They want to reach consumers in the Northeast. And they did a deal with Julian Edelman. Okay, and Julian Edelman at the time is about $15,000 for one sponsored tweet. Okay, these are real numbers. Advertisers dive into them. On that post, the desired outcome was reach. Okay, which was they did reach about 1.7 million people with that post. They generated about 7,000 engagements on that post. Okay, that same week, a local restaurant in Lincoln, Nebraska, it's Runza. It's a fast food restaurant. Did a deal with a guy named Jack Gangwish. Jack Gangwish took a picture in a cornfield with a Runza, this little meal, and generated 21,000 engagements. Okay. Jack Angus was paid $100 for that tweet. Okay. So Burger King generated 7,000 engagements on a $15,000 tweet, and a local restaurant with a recently graduated alumni generated 21,000 engagements on a $100 tweet. So there is enormous passion and value in teaming up with recently graduated alumni and soon to be those student athletes at those same schools because of the local market and the affinity these athletes have within that fan base.
Well, to that point, Blake, as a marketer myself, over an extended period of time, I often thought that the passion of the college fan base, alumni base, is really kind of understated in marketing circles, because that's what really amps up the engagement numbers, and people don't necessarily appreciate that. And now you can do it in a way that's actually measured. So
that's the beauty of the the digital era for every marketer and advertiser is that you can at least get a number to look at when the campaign's done.
Right. Well, guys, I think this has been a great conversation. We at MASB appreciate you to jumping on and share your knowledge with us. Because this is an emerging area, we'd love to find a way to continue these conversations as circumstances warrant. So it's been a pleasure having you on today, talking about name, image, and likeness. And we like to add two other I's, of course, in terms of influencer and hopefully internship, because we think that the bridge from college into business, as we said, for many folks is going to be traversed because they're not going pro in the sport that they're passionate about. So thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon and helping us be more prepared for the opportunity.
Appreciate you, Tony. Thank you.
Tony.